trip, right? And these people would go through these sets of experiences which were designed to elicit a very precise form of experience, which was finally culminated when they were brought face to face with the oracle of the Delphi. And then he asked them this question, and they would have a mystical experience. It was a kind of a programmed mysticism. And so this is an interesting, early use of something that's similar to LSD, but wasn't LSD, because LSD is made in laboratories by humans, where this is a plant that's related to it. Just like when we were talking about the mushrooms and the cactuses, that there are chemicals like mescaline and psilocybin in them that are related to them, but don't exist in their absolutely pure form. In the here, here's a picture of clavicus where you can see the little fruiting bodies, almost like mushrooms. Well, anyway, all through the Middle Ages, people were interested in these ergot compounds, which some early people in the medical area started using for treating postpartum hemorrhage. That was like a folk medicine. And so when modern day pharmaceutical chemistry got into practice, people started looking at these compounds that were part of, that were contained in ergot. Like the first one that was isolated was something called ergotamine. And the man who developed it was Albert Hofmann. There had been predecessors of his at Sandoz Laboratories in Basel, Switzerland, which were looking for chemicals that could be identified as medicines and used for various things. For instance, they developed a drug called ergotamine tartrate, which is used for migraine headaches. They found analeptics, for postpartum hemorrhage. They found all sorts of different kinds of medicines in these things. And Hofmann, worked his way up until he became the director of what they called new products research at Sandoz. In 1938, he actually developed LSD and put it on his shelf and put it away along with his other samples. Never took it, he did give it to, they would give it to birds to see if the birds reacted to it. They wanted to see if it was psychoactive. So the drugs we're talking about are psychoactive. And LSD is, among all the drugs that you talked about in this class, is one of the most centrally active. There's very little peripheral action in it. And so the birds were used as kind of like a bellwether to see if, like canaries in a coal mine, right? Well, these birds. So anyway, Hofmann developed this stuff in 1938. And, 5 years later, right in the middle of World War II, he was thinking about it. He remembered the way that the birds chirp so much more profoundly with this stuff than with any of the other things he developed. So he took it out again, and he started working with it. And they have, the Swiss are very meticulous about the way that they work with things. They are, so it's very unusual that some of the stuff actually went through his gloves, his gloves he was working with in the laboratory. And he got very uneasy and started having hallucinations, and he asked if he could go home. And he took what's called the first bicycle ride, the famous LSD bicycle ride, where he rode home and had this this experience of having the LSD experience. But where he 5 days later he took it again, but this time he'd only had a very small amount. But 5 days later he took it again, and he had the world's first real LSD trip. He took a huge amount, like 250 micrograms, which is. But he thought it was compared to other drugs, it's so potent that he thought it was a very small amount. But he, and at the peak of his experience, nobody had ever taken it before, he was terrified, and he thought that he might be going crazy, and have all kinds of visions. And but when he came back the next day and he was back to normal, he got very, very interested in it, and it actually became his life's work. But he also called it his problem child in his book about it. He called it LSD, My Problem Child, which is Wunderkind from German. He's a German Swiss. And it was something of a problem because here he was part of this Swiss pharmaceutical company, and they were they started sending samples of LSD out to researchers to try out. He thought that they might find it useful for something, and then Sandoz could make some money off of it. So he sent samples all over the world, and actually in the process probably started was the originator of the counterculture of the 60s. It led to that. Here's what the LSD looked like in the bottles. It was called. They gave it a brand name, to try to market it. They called it D-lysate instead of D-lysergic acid. And in any event, so the stuff spread, around through these researchers, and it became of interest to intellectuals and artists because of its unique characteristics. And one of them was Aldous Huxley, who wrote a book about his experiences with mescaline. Mescaline was given to him by Sir Humphrey Osmond, who was a researcher from Toronto, and who had been using LSD to try to treat alcoholism, and actually with quite a bit of success. And he wrote to Huxley about it, and went to Los Angeles, and Huxley had okay, so anyway, he had this experience of it, and actually the rock group, the Doors, was named for Doors of Perception. So that's where they've got their inspiration for it. And it was you really have a hard time talking, we'll talk a little bit later about the experience, but it's very hard to talk about it having any particular experience associated with it. For example, like when you take a stimulant, it has a pretty narrow range of effects, but LSD can have a wide variety of effects. In fact, some people in the psychological area called it a non-specific amplifier of mental functioning, because people can have experiences all the way from the most heavenly to the most hellish, and everywhere in between, all on this one particular drug. So it's hard to talk about it having a specific effect. We can talk about it having a duration of action. It has a duration of action that's pretty specific, being 8 hours. And that's because of its half-life in the body is about 4 hours. It's completely metabolized at the end of 8 hours. So when it goes out of the body, it stops acting. In any event, Hoffman, like I said, he became very interested in it, and a man from the United States, a banker named Gordon Wasson. The picture over here looks like he's a monster. We're looking at it on the monitor here. You have to see it. It looks like, I'm looking at him and going, Gordon Wasson, but it looks like the Hulk. So anyway, but that isn't the Hulk. It's from our Gordon Wasson. And he was a banker, and his wife was from Russia, and she was very interested in mushrooms. He hated them, he thought that mushrooms were really kind of disgusting. He didn't even eat them on his pizza, but she was a collector, and